Welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. I am Aaron Chow, accompanied by Mr. John Harris, of course. We are Shut Up and Ball. Like I said, we're back. Going to be doing our Week 8 picks against the spreads. I've been sharing those picks with y'all this week. I'll update the standings in a second, but just also before I do so, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, rate, review. If you're watching YouTube, like, comment, and if you're listening on whatever podcast network you're listening on, whatever way you can review the podcast from there. They all have different ones. But like I mentioned, we're going into our Week 8 picks. But beforehand, just to update you on the standings. That's what word I was looking for. Don't know why that was so hard. So last week, John and I both went 6-8. We only had 4 differences, split them right down the middle. So I still have a 5-game lead on John. I'm a perfect 500 again. And now we go to the London game. There is a London game this week. And the good old Jags are basically back to their stomping grounds because it's technically the home team. And I think they have played there the most. They are favored by 2.5, hosting the Denver Broncos. I think I just saw a while ago Russell Wilson self-declared that he was going to play. I'm not sure, if that's, but he basically said that he will be playing, dealing with the hamstring issue. So, John, does that affect your pick in regards to these two? Because obviously with Ripien, we all would have gone Jacksonville, but Russell may be playing. So, what do you have?
I think Russell is obviously better than Brett Ripien, but you've brought up repeatedly that you don't feel like he has that same ability just to move, and maybe that's related to this hamstring. And even if it wasn't beforehand, then that's actually even worse because the hamstring would limit him even more. And so just the way that he's built, he's obviously not the tallest of quarterbacks, and it really hasn't ever held him back in his career. But that's because on certain plays, he's able to scramble and make time for himself. And so if he is playing, I think he's going to be limited because everything I've read about this injury is that it takes far longer than just 1 week, at least a minimum of 2 usually before players return to action. But I've seen people even say up to 5. And that's not the only injury he's dealing with. Like he had the other one that he was dealing with. I can't remember what it was, somewhere else in his body before that, like a couple weeks prior that he was playing through. So I think that Russ is just banged up and the Broncos just haven't instilled any confidence in me. So I'm taking Jacksonville here. They're at home. ETN has been looking good recently. And I think the underlying metrics say that Jacksonville is a lot better than their record would indicate. So I'm taking the Jags to come out on the right end of one finally and beat the Denver Broncos and cover.
Oof, yeah, this is a tough one because Denver's defense is really good. I think they're top 5, top 3 in a lot of metrics, especially passing wise.
I will say trade deadline's approaching, and there's a lot of rumors swirling about Bradley Chubb and all these kind of guys on the defensive side. So it could work either way. Maybe they're motivated to try and win to stay, or maybe they feel like they're not wanted. I'm not sure how it's going to sway anything.
Yeah, we'll see. But I'm going with the Jags, basically. It does scare me. The Jags offense, Trevor Lawrence he's been solid, but he's still young. Like I mentioned last podcast, this is still a relatively young team. I think we're seeing that with some of their just at times, not executing or, having some crucial mistakes. And then I had to sprinkle in the Doug Peterson, a little too gung-ho on going for it on 4th downs. I just worry because it is Denver, like you said, and the defense just always makes it like a 13-16 game. Like like you mentioned last podcast, like they scored 16 like multiple times. Like that's like the magic roundabout number. And just not sure if Jacksonville will be willing and experienced enough to be okay with playing in an ugly defensive, field goal type game, punting game. We saw them lose to the Eagles, and we've seen them drop a few here and kind of have some growing pains. And that's just my only concern, but there's a time to do it. It is now. I don't think Trevor Lawrence, as much as I'm being critical of him, I don't think he's going to absolutely throw this game away. Usually, he is pretty smart about learning from his turnovers and not piling on, at least thus far in his career. So even if he makes a turnover, I just think Jacksonville on both sides of the ball, they got enough playmakers on offense. Like you mentioned, ETN's finally freed. He's been He had a really good game last week, and I know like I said, they don't have a true number one receiver, but they still have a lot of solid guys, and Zay Jones, and obviously Christian Kirk, who they paid, and Evan Ingram. So I'm going Jacksonville. I think they just do enough. Basically, how every team beats Denver, they just do enough, and then Denver's offense just doesn't instill much confidence in me. Wouldn't be shocked if it's the defense, Jacksonville defense, that gets like a pick six or gets them in favorable position to really ice this game or give them the advantage. So John and I both going Jacksonville. Sorry, Russ, we don't believe in you. And it is London. Jacksonville, once again, they get a little bit of a boost there, some would argue. But now we head over to the noon games on Sunday. We're going to start with Atlanta, where the Falcons are at home, and they are favored. The Cover Kings are favored by 4.5, hosting the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, Carolina coming off that big win against Tampa, and Falcons trying to recover from that huge loss against the Bengals. John, what do you think happens here?
Well, the Cover Kings failed me last week, and they failed me in a way that really, really upset me, not only in fantasy, but just in the philosophy of football. And I really think that there's got to be, I don't know, I feel like there's got to be a breaking point with this passing attack at some point. And I just think with Carolina, it's crazy to say that I trust PJ Walker and that passing attack more than Mariota and the Falcons one. And I think the Falcons have a decent run game, but I like what I've seen out of Carolina's front seven. Derek Brown, Brian Burns, Shaq Thompson, they have talent over there. And so I don't know. I got a weird feeling that Carolina's going to keep this one close. I wouldn't be shocked if they win. I think they've flown under the radar a lot of the year because, they're playing pretty bad, but they do have a lot of talented pieces. And just unfortunately for me and my fantasy team, if Drake London and Kyle Pitts and that passing attack are going to get like 8 completions total in these games, I think it's just hard for me to bet against Carolina here when I think that they're improving offensively with, DJ Moore finally getting involved, the run game, although it's not McCaffrey, they're getting multiple people who are contributing. And I don't know. I feel like they're playing right now with like house money. Like there's no expectations, so they can just go out there and play. To where the Falcons, it feels like maybe there's a little bit of pressure that they want to win the division. So I don't know. I got a weird feeling that Carolina is going to start picking up some steam here. So I'm taking the Panthers to cover. Don't know if they'll win, but wouldn't be shocked based on the way the Falcons have been passing.
All right, well, here's our first disagreement because I am going with the Atlanta Falcons on this one. I thought about picking Carolina for the cover, but I'm just going to go with the team that I think is going to win here. While the Atlanta offense hasn't been great, we know the formula. Like I said, it's Tennessee Titans light. They're going to try to run the ball with both their quarterback and their running backs. Probably have a few plays to Pitts in London, and I'm hoping that once again Arthur Smith maybe feels a little bit of that public noise about maybe throwing the ball a bit more, maybe gives Mariota more than 11 attempts or 13 attempts. And I'm sure Mariota probably has heard the noise as well. So that's a little bit of a motivating factor for me. And then also, while Carolina's offense found ways to move the ball last week, I just think Atlanta's defense won't be as aggressive as Tampa Bay. And I'm sure that they'll also have a good idea. They usually do of, finding where the tendencies are, what areas of the field, you like to throw to, and especially with PJ Walker and, pretty much DJ Moore as the only main skill position guy you're really scared of. Probably going to see a lot of doubling. I'm not sure the status of AJ Terrell, if AJ Terrell's not going to be on him. So I think Atlanta just mucks this one up. It's probably going to be another game anyway. Probably be like a 17-13 game, which I'm hoping not, maybe a little more like 17-10 or 9 or whatever. But I think Atlanta wins by more than 4.5 and covers. I just have a little bit more faith in them thus far than Carolina, basically. So first disagreement on the board for John and myself for the NFC South division matchup there. Now we go to your game, John. Your Dallas Cowboys, they are favored by 9.5, hosting the Chicago Bears. This will be an interesting battle between Justin Fields and Micah Parsons. So who do you have here, John?
Well, they asked Micah Parsons if he thinks Justin Fields is faster than Jalen Hurts, and he said, it doesn't matter because none of them are faster than I am, which I think is really funny. I don't know if you saw the play, by the way, if you saw any highlights from the Cowboys-Lions game, but there was a play that literally, it was like the Lions' backup tight end was running in for a touchdown, and Micah moved probably the fastest I have ever seen a man of that size move in my entire life. It was a wild play. Saved the drive, too, because then the next play, they forced a fumble on the 1 yard line. So crazy effort from him on that play to run from behind and outrun literally everybody on the field. Anyway, I'm going with Chicago here. Pod jinx, pod curse or not, I think the 9.5 feels a little bit big because I think that Dallas is still going to take things a little bit slow, run the ball, not necessarily do anything to blow anybody out. And I liked what I saw out of Chicago last week with Justin Fields, and I think that their run schemes, if they commit to doing that again, can keep this game low scoring, long drives for both teams if they both commit to the run. And I think that Chicago could keep it relatively close. I still think they lose, but if they lost by like a touchdown, I wouldn't be shocked. Like if this game turned out to be like a 21-14 kind of game, wouldn't shock me just because I think there's going to be a lot of long, drawn-out drives focused around the run-centric offenses for both teams. That could change with Dallas because Zeke might not play this week. So if you got Tony Pollard in any leagues, plug him into your lineup because he might go off. And so if you don't have Zeke, you might rely a little bit more on the pass game because you don't want to overwork Pollard too much by giving him like 30-something carries. But you never know. He's a young guy, doesn't have a ton of damage, so they might. But regardless, taking Chicago to cover.
All right. I'm going Dallas here. I think, even though Chicago had a really good showing last week and their run offense is pretty good, I just think because of their lack of passing game, and I think that Dan Quinn's going to be ready for that, ready to, crowd the line of scrimmage, crowd the box, have some creative blitzes too, and basically just dare Justin Fields in the passing attack to beat them. And as much as, I like Justin Fields, like we mentioned before, I just don't think the passing attack is complex enough and just talented enough. Like I said, Darnell Mooney, more like a number 2 as opposed to number 1, and Trevon Diggs, almost mixing my Diggs, he's having a really good year, and I suspect he won't have any issues. Or even your whole corner room really's had a really solid year too. So even if they move, I'm not sure if they play sides, but regardless of who's matching up on Mooney, I don't expect him to be killing them.
They usually play sides.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I expect the defense to do a lot of the dirty work, basically, which they've done all season. And no, Zeke does kind of hurt, but honestly, I mean, Tony Pollard, we've seen he's probably the more explosive back out of the two. So I expect them to find some ways to get him in space, break some runs. I'm not sure if you saw, I'm pretty sure you did, but you saw the press conference, first off, Bears traded Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith, very emotional about it. And man, if he's the leader of your defense, and especially it seems like all of a sudden, I just feel like Chicago, that defense is going to have the mindset like, man, like, okay, we're fire selling, and not to say they're going to tank the game, but stuff like that can, mess with your psyche, mess with your mental game. And Chicago may not be on their P's and Q's entirely because of a loss like that. Because even though he hasn't been there for a long time, it's a talented player, a veteran. So that's obviously signaling that they may not be going for it this year. So I'm going Dallas. I think this is potentially a get-right game for Dak, too. Maybe he throws a couple of touchdowns. Doesn't really need a get-right game. He looked fine last game. But for those that, want to see the multiple touchdowns next to his name, this probably might be a good game for that, especially with no Zeke. So I'm going Dallas. I think they cover. And John obviously believes the Cowboys will win, but Chicago will cover, or basically just invoking the pod jinx there. So now we head over to see the Miami Dolphins. They are favored by 3.5. They're going to Detroit to play Dan Campbell and Jared Goff and the Lions. John, how do you foresee this one shaking out?
Well, this one, I think it's kind of cut and dry. I think Miami's the better team. I don't really believe in Detroit's defense to get that many stops. They couldn't stop Dallas last week in Dak's return game, and they just really haven't been able to stop most teams that they've played. And now you're coming up against two of the top 5 receiving yards leaders in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I don't think that Jeff Okudah and the schemes that he has used against certain receivers are going to work against Tyreek Hill or Waddle, because they're just so fast that, okay, maybe you can bump them off the line, but once they get past you, they're going to be gone. And, if you do it to one of them, because that was what they did against Justin Jefferson, they really focused on him. They gave Okudah a lot of safety help. If you do that to one of them, the other guy's going to have a big week, because the corner on the opposite side, Owarike, I can't remember how you pronounce his name. So sorry to him. But on the other side, he's been one of the worst graded cornerbacks in the entire NFL. Not even just starting cornerbacks, overall cornerbacks in the entire NFL. So taking Miami here to win and cover. And I do think Detroit's offense can have some semblance of success, because I believe DeAndre Swift should be back this week, hopefully. But I still don't think it's going to be enough to keep up with Miami. You're muted.
Whoops. I mentioned last podcast that Jared Goff is back, the not good Jared Goff, and that's basically why I'm going with Miami. I mean, he had a nice moment, but he's been struggling recently. His decision making, we've seen, once you get pressure on Goff, get him a little flustered, he starts making mistakes. That is who he is. Miami defense seems to kind of be rounding into form recently. And then you already mentioned the offense. I mean, so hard to stop those two speedsters. And, Tua is a very accurate quarterback, and, they have a good plan of attack and so many different ways to get those guys. And some of these other guys, Raheem Mostert's been having a little more efficiency in the run game. So you can see it's kind of starting to affect defenses, because now they're like, okay, maybe we have to focus on stopping these guys, and, they have to play back a little more, and then it opens up some holes in the run game. I basically just expect Goff to at least have 1 or 2 killer turnovers, and, just be like a 24-10 type game or something like that. So go on Miami here. Sorry, Dan Campbell. Just once again, not your year, as the Lions will probably fall here, but who knows? But speaking of the Lions and the NFC North, we are going to Minnesota, where the Vikings are off their bye week. They are favored by 3.5, hosting the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals with that huge win over New Orleans last Thursday. Who do you have here, John?
I'm going to take the Arizona Cardinals. I know that might feel weird, but honestly, I think the Vikings have been pretty good so far this year, but I haven't been super impressed in terms of like the opponents they've beaten. I mean, they beat Miami with Skylar Thompson, and then they went to Teddy. They beat the Bears. They beat the Saints, who we already saw the Cardinals beat as well. They beat the Lions, and they beat the Packers, who have kind of been struggling, and that was even week 1. So none of those opponents really impressed me a ton. And although the Cardinals don't impress me either, a lot of those games were close. We look at the Lions game, the Vikings only won by 4. We look at the Saints game, they only won by 3. The Bears game, they won by a touchdown. Even the Dolphins game, playing the 2 different backup quarterbacks, they only won by 8 points. And so they're not blowing anybody out. And I think that Kyler, Hopkins, Benjamin, some of the guys, Zach Ertz they have over there, can be good enough to at least keep it close. And based on a lot of these close games, wouldn't be shocked if Arizona was to lose by like a field goal. So I'm taking Arizona to cover.
I'm going with Minnesota. I think they'll win and cover. Like I mentioned, I just don't think Arizona's offense is fixed after last week. They were gifted by 2 pick sixes and another interception too that set up short field. So I don't think their offensive issues are going to be fixed. And Minnesota defense has been better this year, especially their front 4. Zadarius Smith has had a little resurgence, and good for him. I know I'm a Packer fan, but it's, good to see him healthy and balling out again. And then Danielle Hunter's also just been able to stay healthy too. So I think, especially with considering those 2 guys on the edge, I think that they'll be able to contain Kyler to some success. And then, especially with Harrison Smith in the back and Eric Kendricks too, I think that they'll be all over their tendencies in this offense. In the past, especially in the passing game, I don't think they really fear the run game of Arizona. Don't think anyone really does. And on the flip side, we've seen this Minnesota offense take a step. We mentioned their O-line's pretty good. They're fresh off a bye, so that's another week that Dalvin Cook's healthier. And then I expect that they'll have probably some creative concepts too. I mean, I would assume so, coming off an extra week of rest/preparation, and they'll probably have a few more wrinkles in their offense, and probably to have some answers to Vance Joseph and some of his creative blitzes. And yeah, I just, at the end of the day, I do think Arizona's defenses will be solid, but I just don't think it'll be enough to counteract that their offense probably won't have much success in this matchup, I think. So I'm going with Minnesota, especially at home. John going Arizona to cover at least. So we'll see who is right there on another disagreement between us. But now we go to see the Las Vegas Raiders. They are favored by 1.5 going to the New Orleans Saints. Andy Dalton it was already ruled a starter, even though Jameis was healthy. So that is important to note. But John, so Andy Dalton at the helm. Who do you have between these two?
I'm going with the Raiders. It's mainly the Saints defense. They haven't been very good, but also, like I mentioned with Tampa earlier, but actually even worse, their entire secondary, mainly all their corners, are hurt. And with Tampa, there's a chance a lot of those guys play. Lattimore has not played since like week 5. Adebo, I don't think has played since week 6. Bradley Roby went out during the middle of last game. That's all 3 of their starting corners who could still be out this week. And you're going up against Devontae Adams. You're going up against Hunter Renfrow. Mac Hollins has been good on the year so far. You got Darren Waller at tight end. Overall, their secondary just hasn't been impressive, and I think that Derek Carr and the passing offense have been efficient, and that's not even mentioning the fact that Josh Jacobs has been a man-possessed the entire year. So I can't bet against the Raiders here. Also, once again, one of those teams that I think they're better than their record would indicate, and I think at some point we're going to see positive regression. They're going to catch up to where their true skill level is, and I think that this is going to be one of those weeks. So I am taking the Raiders to win and cover.
I'm rolling with you. I'm going with the Raiders also. It's tough because I do completely agree with you in regards to Raiders offense versus Saints defense. Just to add on to one more thing, like you mentioned, that even the Saints front four just hasn't been the same. Cameron Jordan, he's still good, but not near the level of dominance he was. They've lost some pieces in the interior line, and the guys they've tried to get on the other side of Cameron Jordan haven't really lived up to their potential, and Marcus Davenport especially. And then for the Raiders defense, Saints offense, it does scare me a little bit because, Andy Dalton, I think as we all have seen, still good. I know he threw 3 picks last week, but this offense has still been operating pretty well under him. Olave will be available. Who knows if Michael Thomas will, but they still have Olave and Kamara for this game. End of day, I just, like you already alluded to, I just think that Raiders offense, I don't really see how they're going to slow them down. I didn't even know that Adebo was out also, and Roby, so that's another kudos or add-on for me. That's just a cherry on top. So yeah, I imagine the Raiders defense, they're not terrible. They've been kind of middle of the pack. Just seems like performance-wise, they're not like a huge liability. So I imagine they'll find at least a couple of stops, or at least enough for their offense to score more, have more opportunities, and ultimately win the game. Got to tell you, win the game, you score more points than the other people. So we both go Raiders over Saints. Now we go to an AFC East matchup, and it is between the New England Patriots. They are favored by 2.5 going to the New York Jets. Mac Jones already ruled the starter for this game. Who do you have between these two, John?
I'm going to go with the Patriots here. I just don't know how I feel about the Jets offense without Breece Hall. Obviously, he was kind of the guy there, and a lot of their offense was running through him. And without him, I just don't know what I'm going to get. I don't know how confident I should be in this offense. I like Michael Carter. I don't think James Robinson's going to fully have a grasp on the playbook yet, so I'm not really expecting much from him. But overall, I got to see it before I can really believe it. And at least for the Patriots, I think they're going to need a bounce back game. So yeah, I'm taking the Patriots. I don't feel super confident about it. This is one of the ones I feel the least confident about because of what we saw from New England on Monday, and then also the fact that I just don't know what I'm going to get out of the Jets offense. So don't feel strongly about it, but I'm taking the Patriots.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I'm going with the Jets. They're at home. this defense has been really good as of recently. They're kind of starting finding their way and coming together to what Rob Sala's been wanting them to be. And as much as I'm a Mac Jones believer, and I am, but I'm just not entirely sure that New England's offense is going to be back to clicking. They are reliant on getting the run game going, and I think the Jets will be able to slow that down. And outside of really Tyquan Thornton, he's not really an established receiver. They really have a lot of difference makers. I mean, they have a lot of guys that have their roles. Jacoby Myers, we've seen some Devontae Parker. I don't know. I think it's just tough, especially on a short-ish week. Mac Jones is technically his second start, but his first hopefully full game. In a while, it's not going to be an easy environment to be thrown back into. And for the flip side, I am worried about obviously losing Breece Hall sucks because he's been there, basically the only explosive element of their offense recently. We'll see. Do you know if there's any sort of status on Elijah Moore?
I heard he's playing. I'm hoping. Last I saw.
Okay, I would say this would be the game to do so because you need him. Because who knows? I know Corey Davis went out last week with an injury. They, like you've already alluded to, I don't think the Jets will lean on the run game as much. I expect them to because they are a defensive team, they have a defensive head coach. Still probably do so, but won't have much success. I think Zach Wilson will make enough plays, either buying time, keeping plays alive, keeping good field position, just not getting sacked. And, he already experienced New England a bit last year, so I feel like we'll have maybe a little better idea of what to expect from Bill Belichick. I don't expect him to light up the world, but I expect him to do enough for them to win. Going to probably a defensive battle here, probably a 20-17 have the Jets winning here. That's what I think. So I'm going Jets. John's going Patriots. We'll see who wins between Zach Wilson and Mac Jones there. Now we head over to Philadelphia, where the Eagles are at home. They are favored by 10.5, hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. So basically, John, do you think Philly covers or not?
I do. I'm going to keep this one short and simple. I think Philly's the better team. I don't think it's really close. I think Kenny Pickett's going to turn the ball over, and I think the Eagles are going to come out here with a pretty simple, easy win. Yeah,
especially, this Philly defense is a little simplistic at times, I feel, but I mean, so is Pittsburgh's kind of offense. They're not really be able to run the ball with much efficiency, and so they're probably just going to be passing a lot. And I think that plays into Philly's hands, what they want you to do with their depth at D-line. We'll see how much, if Robert Quinn will even be activated, and how much he'll play. But regardless, they still have a pretty good front four to go after guys, and solid enough secondary that, like you mentioned, I think they'll probably definitely have some turnovers. And then on the flip side, usually Philly has a pretty good plan of attack, especially we've seen in the first half. They usually, try to have a few really good drives, get up, and then they can, because of the way they're built with their good O-line and Hurts being able to run the ball and their stable of running backs led by Miles Sanders, they find ways just to eat up clock in the second half and just ice the game there. And then obviously if you creep up, Hurts is good enough to hit you with the long bomb. So I am going with the Philadelphia Eagles to cover here also. So that one is an easy one in the books. Now we go to the ever so fun AFC South. The Tennessee Titans, they're favored by 2.5 going to Houston. Who do you have here, John?
Well, just random note, Brandon Cooks did not practice today, and it was not injury related. I'm thinking he might get traded. He might not. We'll see. He might play. You never know. It could have been a family thing. Could have been a personal thing. You never know. But I'm taking Tennessee here. I think they're the better team. I'm surprised this line's this close. I know that Houston is at home, but I still think that Tennessee is the far superior team. So keeping it short and simple, taking the Titans.
Yeah, I'm going Tennessee also. Not much else to add. Yeah, I mean, Houston, they've got some good building block pieces, but no outside of Brandon Cooks, no real star on either side of the ball, really. And like he's alluded to, maybe Brown Cooks isn't even there. So, Dameon Pierce is good and all. He's obviously not the level yet, and they're not good as a team where they can just lean on him to basically win them the game. I'm going Tennessee also, expecting the whole Derrick Henry formula. Derrick Henry, good defense. They win the game like probably 16-13. Yeah, we all know that Tennessee's one of those muck-it-up teams. But keeping it in their division, going to one of their division rivals, we're going to Indianapolis, where Sam Ehlinger will get his first start and he's favored in his first start by 2.5 against Taylor Heineke and the Washington Commanders. Sucks because, could have been a Carson Wentz revenge game, but he got hurt. Who do you have here, though, John, between these two teams?
I am going to go with Washington. I don't feel confident about this one either. And I'm worried that the Colts might finally just start feeding Jonathan Taylor, and that's going to lead to success. But I don't really believe in Sam Ehlinger in his first start. I got to see it before I'm going to believe it. And honestly, what I saw when he played in college was inconsistent accuracy, not the biggest of arms. I don't know. I just didn't really see a starting NFL quarterback in him, and I'm not sure that this move is being made for the sake of winning football games. And meanwhile, on the other side, Taylor Heineke, he's just one of those scrappy guys who just finds ways to win. And I don't think that he's playing one of the best defenses in the NFL like we thought the Colts would be going into the year. I still don't know the status of Shaq Leonard. I don't think he's played a game yet, right? Like, he's still hurt.
I think the one game he went back in is when he got the concussion and hurt his nose too at the same time.
Okay. He was a full participant in practice, but you never know. Anyway, because he was a full participant in practice last week and they still ruled him out. So I don't know. I'm going with Washington here because I just feel like I know more so what I'm going to get. And I feel like that's like, okay, they can probably get into the 20s in terms of points. And I'm not quite confident the Colts can yet.
Whew. I'm going with Indianapolis. I think they're going to do what you alluded to. They're going to lean on Jonathan Taylor in the run game, and I think they'll probably involve Sam Ehlinger in the read option game. And while I agree with you, from what I've seen, Ehlinger's arm, especially accuracy and such, wasn't that great. It had to be good enough, at least in practice or from what Frank Reich's seen, to make this move at this time. I know Matt Ryan's technically dealing with an injury, but just to outwardly say that Matt Ryan's basically probably not going to be the starter for the rest of the year, like, that's huge. And I think they have to have at least some sort of confidence in Sam Ehlinger. And I think that the Indianapolis defense, although they may be missing Shaq Leonard again, I think the front four is at least, especially with DeForest Buckner, at least a little bit better than Washington, at least more impactful. It's really just a battle between like two kind of like mid of the range defenses, so it's hard to really gauge what's going to happen. But I just think Indianapolis is going to feed Jonathan Taylor and probably have a new creative plays and ways to get their receivers the ball. And hopefully we'll see what happens with Washington's offense, because Heineke, he's had moments where he's looked solid, like last week. We kind of saw both. We saw like in the first half he wasn't great, but then the second half, later in the game, he kind of heated up, kind of what we saw last year out of him. So I expect I expect there to be some inconsistency in his play, which obviously same for Ehlinger. So who knows what will happen there, but that is another difference for us. So our fate lies in those guys' hands for that one. So that'll be fun. But now we go back to the NFC West, going to see that the San Francisco 49ers, they are favored by 1.5 going to the LA Rams off their bye week. Who do you have between these two, John?
I took the Rams the last time they played, and it's going to be just my luck that they actually do cover this time, but I'm taking the Niners. I'm going with history. Kyle Shanahan has had McVay's number, and I don't know. I think that McCaffrey, with a full week to actually learn the playbook, we're going to see more of him. The Rams haven't had to deal with a guy like him yet, and on the Rams side, they're coming off the bye week, so maybe they're prepared more so this time, but like I said, they burned me last time, and historically, the Niners have been on the right side. And I'm not going to test history again this time. And of course, watch this be the time that I get it wrong.
Going with the San Francisco 49ers with you also. I've mentioned before, I just don't think that the Rams offensive line, there's an issue. I don't see it being resolved anytime quickly, at least, unless they get some sort of major trade, but I don't even know what assets they have left. And because of that, obviously they'll be one-dimensional, and San Francisco still a solid defense, and I think we saw last time they were able to get some stops. They kind of had a good idea, because they played each other so much, good idea of what Sean McVay likes to do, especially in the passing game. And like I said, because he's one-dimensional, that'll be easy to kind of lean on. And on the flip side, like you mentioned, CMC added to this offense. Now it's just, I mean, I'm sure the Rams were like, great. Like we thought we would have the advantage with it, some extra time to prepare, but then halfway into our extra week, basically 1 week is wasted because then they get, McCaffrey last week and they're like, great. So we have to account for this guy on top of it and we've only seen like 10 snaps. You know what I mean?
Just random. It would be kind of funny. Like they're not doing the in-season Hard Knocks for the Rams, doing it for the Cardinals. I don't think it's started yet, but imagine they're doing it for the Rams. I would have loved to seen their reactions when the news broke that the Niners got McCaffrey a week before they played each other.
Yeah, so I'm sure the defensive staff really just had some late nights, extra late nights this week that they were not prepared for. So yeah, I'm going with San Fran, and also LA Rams defense just hasn't been as good too. Still we're starting to see, yes, they have stars, but missing some of the filler guys that are necessary to be a great defense. So we're both going San Fran in that one. Now we head over to Seattle. Geno Smith and the Seahawks are favored by 3.5, hosting the New York Giants. One of the more exciting teams this year to watch versus one of the more boring teams this year to watch. So who are you going with between these two?
I'm going to go with the Giants. Seattle's games usually turn into shootouts, and even against the Chargers last week, who have not been the greatest offensively, it still had a lot of points scored in that game. And I think that this is a game where Saquon can make a big impact. This is a game where Daniel Jones and his legs can make a big impact. And I just don't think that Seattle's secondary, despite the fact that Tariq Woolen's playing really well and they got guys like Quandre Diggs who are really good, I don't think that they're going to test this poor Giants receiving core enough by stopping the run and forcing them to throw to those kind of guys. So, yeah, I'm taking the Giants to cover. Wouldn't be shocked if they won. I do think it's really interesting that Vegas continually makes the Giants the underdogs, because I guess you could say like Seattle has that home field advantage that like I wouldn't be shocked if it's, the full 3.5, even maybe 4 points that they credit them because of how loud and crazy it can get in Seattle. But I don't know. I still just think it's funny that the Giants, despite how good the record is, continue to kind of get disrespected by the betting odds. So we'll see if they continue to buck the trend.
I'm rolling with you. I'm going with the Giants also. Even if they don't win, I expect them to keep it close. That's just been their mantra this whole season. They've, like I said, they've been one of those muck it up teams. And especially, I mentioned, they're able to keep these long sustained drives, running the ball efficiently with Saquon, and then enough runs with Daniel Jones and the short passing that, I think their offense will do enough. And then while Seattle's been exciting, probably no DK Metcalf this week, so I expect that to hinder some of their passing offense. I'm sure the Giants defense will probably more focused on selling out on the run to slow down Kenneth Walker, and then probably divert more attention towards Tyler Lockett. Interesting enough too, kind of a revenge game too for Geno Smith, because he was the Giants' backup for a hot minute too. I think he started a game for them also. So who knows? Maybe this is one of those teams on his like revenge list that he's got. So maybe he balls out here. I have to see it to believe it. I am going with the Giants with John also to take care of business, or at least cover. So now we head to the Sunday night game. Buffalo Bills at home off a bye week. They are favored by 10.5 against my Green Bay Packers. Where are you going here, John?
Going with Buffalo. Off a bye week. Just not going to test them, especially with Green Bay kind of in the spot that they're at, sort of struggling. Aaron Rodgers calling out players publicly, and you never know how they respond to that. Like, maybe it motivates them and they play better. Maybe they don't. I don't know. We'll have to see for any player. And then also, like, Allen Lazard's kind of questionable, so who knows if he plays. Like, the run game hasn't been, having that much success. I don't know. I saw Mina Kimes tweeted that the one weakness that she's really found statistically in Buffalo's defense was that they're like 20th ranked against like opposing wide receiver ones in terms of coverage. But like, who's the wide receiver one in Green Bay? Like, if Allen Lazard especially doesn't play, like, I don't know.
No Cobb.
Yeah. I'm going with Buffalo.
Yeah. I'm going Buffalo too, and not for the pod jinx. It's just like you've already said, it's just a bad storm. And that's why I said last week we needed to win that game as a Packer team because we had these guys coming. And I was at least hoping, even if we had lost last week, for an inspirational performance from like the offense. Haven't gotten that, obviously. And now, like, the defense, Washington was able to run the ball on them and have some success. I'm pretty sure if that happens, then how are we going to stop Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills? I'm not sure. My only hope is that maybe because the Bills are so one-dimensional, it might kind of play into our hands because our run defense hasn't been great. But Bills defense has been really good. Doug McDermott is really good, especially at game planning and taking away tendencies. And the Packers' tendencies this year, passing-wise, have been, we're going to pass it short and or the line behind the line of scrimmage and run the ball. And I think they'll all be all over that. And, I expect to be still somber after late Sunday night because, we're going to take that out, I assume. So, go on Buffalo. We both are. Sorry, Green Bay. Who knows? Maybe the pod jinx will work, and this is a turning point. But I'm not putting any money on it, and I hope no one else is. But anyways, now we go to the Cincinnati Bengals. They are favored by 3.5, going to Cleveland. Cincinnati fresh off that big win. Cleveland just lost to the Ravens last week in a close one. Who do you have between these two?
I am going with Cincinnati here. Cleveland's defense has just really not been impressive to me. And especially against the run, like we've seen many teams have sort of gashed them with the run. The Patriots were able to do it with Ramondre Stevenson. Who did Cleveland play last week? They played Baltimore. Gus Edwards had a good game. They haven't looked very good against the run. Even like a couple weeks ago, they played the Chargers. Eckler put up multiple touchdowns on them. The week before that, they played the Falcons, and like Algier and Huntley both had, I think, over 50 yards. So basically what I'm saying is I think that this could be a very big week for Mr. Joe Mixon. And even if it's not, Jamar Chase is still super talented. Tyler Boyd's been having a good run. T. Higgins is great. Joe Burrow is on fire. It's too much offensive firepower for me to not pick the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yep, I am going with the Bengals also. Main reasons you listed. I'll just add on to, like I've mentioned before, Browns very simplistic on defense, and especially if they like to play the cover 3 or play some man, basically leave their corners on the island in the cover 3. That's just what the Bengals want, and I'm sure they'll have plenty of ways to attack that. And like you mentioned too, probably be a little more patient with Joe Mixon, get him involved. And then on the flip side, Bengals defense has been quietly very good yet again, and I expect them to be basically do the simple formula that everyone kind of approaches Cleveland with. You got to stop the run game and make a beat you through the air, and especially since they don't have David Njoku. All you really have to worry about is Amari Cooper and Dobbins, Peoples-Jones, and I'm sure that the Bengals will be able to take that away with they have some talent in the secondary with Jesse Bates and such, and they have a good front four. So I'm going Cincinnati as well. Think they are kind of riding this hot wave quietly that they've been on, and they'll take. Do they already have the lead in the AFC North? If not, they're tied for it. They're right there. But I'm pretty sure they do have the lead now in that division.
I think didn't the Ravens beat them? So I think they're tied maybe, and they're
tied. Ravens on the tiebreaker.
Both 4-3.
But so we'll see. But regardless, be right in that driver's seat there. Push the Browns further down, and for Cleveland, it would unable to tread water until Deshaun Watson gets back. So those are our picks against the spread for week 8. You ready for the locks?
Yep. You get to go first this week because I believe I chose first last week. We are both on 0 points still because we both got one wrong last week. So just a reminder for anyone who's listening, we get to pick a game against the spread that we are locking as a surefire thing. And if any one of our picks go wrong, we get 0 points in the whole week. So which one are you taking first?
All right. I'm going to pick on the Texans here. I'm going to pick Tennessee.
Oh, okay. That feels like an easy one.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Buffalo. I know it's a big spread.
I thought about it.
They're good, man.
It's just, who knows? You know what I mean? Maybe Green Bay could probably score some
I'm hoping the garbage time doesn't come through. I'm hoping that, like...
And I will say Buffalo is actually not afraid of always going for the jugular and beating it by 40. Yeah. And then they called off the dogs once it's like 30-40. Right. So I'm going Miami.
Okay.
Riding the Jared Goff mistake train.
I am going to go with the Raiders. That one feels a little...
I thought about that one just at first, but I'm just like...
a little more risky
who knows?
To me,
like the Saints...
But that secondary and all the injuries they got, I'm betting on Devontae Adams and the passing attack.
Yeah. I'm just scared that the Saints offense may do like it may be a Taysom Hill game, just like 3 touchdowns and it goes off.
It's gonna be anybody's game. Let it be Chris Olave at least. Like help my fantasy team.
Yes, keep the Olave train. He's been carrying me in one of my leagues at wide receiver. But
also, I just want to add too. I know this doesn't have to do with the locks, but our preseason predictions. I took Breece Hall. You took Olave as the rookie of the years. I would say probably as to right now, they're probably like 2 of the top 5 guys. Well, they were.
I think Kenneth
Walker
is as of right now. Oh, sorry, Murray. Kenneth Walker. Yes, Kenneth Walker is like the odds-on favorite as of like
today.
Because
Breece toward the
rookie of the year,
not gonna win
and he's been balling out the past few weeks. Dude, I want to.
You don't have to take another.
I'm gonna be risky. I'm gonna take another one. I'm gonna do it. I'm going for Philly.
Big one.
Not sure that Pittsburgh can right the ship here, and then I'm done. But
I mean, you can take more if you want more than that.
No. 3 is where I'll push it. I'll push it at 3. But
if you're going for 3, I feel like I gotta go for 3, and.
I mean, I didn't go for 3 last week.
I know, but I don't want you to get 3 right and then have the lead on me in both locks and the weekly wins and losses.
We'll have to remember this moment. We have to remember who this last team you picked was, because this is a team that drops the ball.
Well, we're gonna find out tomorrow because I'm taking Baltimore. It could have been 3-2.
I thought about Baltimore.
I'm gonna take Baltimore's the tough. Thursday game, so I'm gonna know early if my locks are doomed or not if they cover.
Yeah, you know whether or not to have to pay much attention.
Yeah.
Or care.
Yeah, exactly.
About the spread.
And I think that's it.
Not that you don't care, but like care more. Yeah, that'd be okay. So we both got 3. John's got Baltimore over the 1.5 Baltimore being given 1.5 against the Bucks. He's got Vegas 1.5 over the Saints, and he also has the Bills minus 10.5 against my Packers. For me, I have Miami minus 3.5 against Detroit. Philly minus 10.5 against Pittsburgh, and Tennessee minus 2.5. So going with all my favorites. John threw in a underdog. So that may be the way too. So we'll see. But otherwise, that'll be all for us on this one. As per usual, you know where to find us. Instagram at Shut Up and Ball Pod. Twitter, TikTok at Shut Up and Ball. We have our YouTube. We're getting closer to 1,000 subscribers there. Shut Up and Ball. Same with our Facebook page. And we're on all podcast streaming platforms. For John and myself, that will be all for this week. We will see you all to talk results of Week 8 next week. Adios.